Hi, Tapas Fleming here, TATlife.com. For a long time, I had a wish in my heart to help veterans, and I want to tell you a story about how I got to one time. It was the spring of 2008, and Harold McRae, a newly minted TAT Pro, and perhaps trainer by that time, called me to say, Tapas, I'm thinking about doing a workshop for combat veterans. Harold was well known in his community. He'd been a therapist for many years and was well respected. He said, I need to know from you, does this work? I need to know for absolutely sure. And I said, Harold, absolutely. So he said, okay. And he took me on my word and arranged for a 2-week-long workshop in the evenings for combat veterans. So we were doing about 2.5 hours each night, Monday through Friday. The first night, Brian Davis came. Brian walked in with a cane, and he was fairly quiet. At the end of talking about trauma and then doing TAT with everybody, he said, I didn't even unpack my bag. I came here, in fact, to show you people, meaning us TAT people, that you had no right to say to us, combat veterans, that you could help us. So I chose the worst thing that ever happened to me. He said, I was in a helicopter. I was shot out of the helicopter, and when I came to, I'd been stripped naked, and these guys were hacking at me with machetes. Obviously, he was rescued out of that situation. He said, I don't feel bad about that anymore. It doesn't bother me. And that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. He said he couldn't sleep a night through 4 years since he'd been out of the military. About every 45 minutes, he'd wake up in some combat situation, just thrashing, so he couldn't sleep with his wife. About 4 days or so into the workshop, he was riding his bike, 15 miles, and he opened a little basket on the back and took out a small envelope and said, my daughter wrote this and this is for you. He hadn't read it. So I opened it up, and it was this beautiful little kid-style lined paper written with a pencil. And she wrote, on August 10th, 2008, Dear Ms. Fleming, thank you for helping my dad. I'm happy you helped him because he's a lot nicer and plays with us more. My dad almost cried because you helped him. We're glad you came to help him. He lets me sit in his lap and holds my hand more. From Haley Davis. So we spent the next week and a half or so hearing stories from all kinds of people about things they'd experienced. things they said they'd never told anyone, but now that they were over it because of the TAT, they were telling us. Towards the end of the workshop, when everyone had left except a couple of people, Brian said to me, "Do you have time? Do you have a couple of minutes?" I said, "Sure." So I walked out of our meeting room into a hallway, and he said, "When I got back, after I'd been rescued from that time when I was shot out of the helicopter, I was in a hospital back in the States, and President Clinton pinned a Purple Heart on my pillow." He said, "I have 4 Purple Hearts and 3 kids. And I'd like to give you the Purple Heart from that time." So he handed me this Purple Heart, which I treasure. I treasure it from him, and I treasure that I had the opportunity to help he and his family be close for the rest of their lives in a way they could never be close without what the group of us offered. So I'm eternally grateful to Harold McRae, and thank you to Brian Davis and Haley for writing me that letter. These are eternal treasures of my heart, and I appreciate it. So, thank you for listening, and see you next time.